Nothing you meet is random. It's all connected.
What if he never actually fell in love with you?
What if he fell in love with how he felt about himself when you were there? That's the part no one tells you. Not your friends, not the dating coaches, not the endless self-help advice echoing online, because the truth hides beneath the surface, in the ego. And in men, the ego isn't just an identity, it's a shield, a compass, a story they cling to when the world gets loud. Carl Jung once said, we all wear masks, and behind every mask is the face we dare not show. But here's the secret he didn't say out loud.
A man falls in love with the reflection of his ideal self, not just the woman standing in front of him.
And when he looked at her, he saw clarity, power, a version of himself that felt possible.
Not because she praised him, not because she needed him,
but because something in her energy, her gaze, her restraint, her silence, mirrored the man he wanted to become. He didn't know why he kept thinking of her. He just did. She had marked something in him, silently, deeply. And no one else had ever done that. So now the question isn't, did he love you? It's, what part of himself did you awaken that he couldn't forget?
And if that's true, who are you becoming when you're seeing that clearly?
What if the reason he forgot you was because you touched the wrong part of him? Most women are taught to flatter. Nice shirt, you're so handsome, or you're successful. But vanity is loud and shallow. Pride is quiet and unforgettable. Vanity is how he wants to be seen. Pride is how he hopes to be. Carl Jung once said the ego isn't just what we project. It's what we protect. And every man protects the part of him that doesn't quite believe he's enough. When you echo his doubts with surface-level praise, it pleases him, but it doesn't change him. But when you speak to the center of his identity, the part that wants to be more than he is, he starts seeing himself through your eyes. And that sticks. You didn't say, like, you're smart. You said, the way you notice things no one else does, and it's rare. You didn't say, you're successful. You said, you're building something most people wouldn't even dare to dream. That's not flattery, that's psychological imprint. Because you didn't just make him feel admired, you made him feel seen. And being seen, truly seen, is what the male ego secretly aches for. Why does he suddenly lose interest right after he says you're everything he's looking for? It's not confusion, it's not fear of commitment, it's the ego and how it forms attachment. Carl Jung said that growth only emerges through tension. The male ego, wired to pursue and conquer, does not fall in love with ease. It falls in love with effort. He may say he wants something simple, but something inside him craves the chase, not the game, not manipulation, but meaning earned through initiation. When you always reply first, when you're always available, when he doesn't have to lift a finger to earn your time, his ego receives a quiet message. This cost me nothing. And what costs nothing changes nothing. But when he feels your energy retreat, just slightly, when he senses that your attention must be earned, not assumed, he leans in. His ego sharpens. His mind awakens. He's no longer just texting you, he's trying to reach you.
Not because you're playing hard to get, but because finally something about you whispered, you're not there yet.
And that yet rewrites everything he thought he understood about you and about himself. What if he didn't love you for who you were, but for the man he became in your presence?
Not the version he shows the world, but the silent one he only sees in the mirror when no one is watching.
That man, the ideal self, the unfinished self. Jung called it the unconscious aspiration, a psychic image of what we're secretly trying to become. And whether he admits it or not, every man carries that image. It's shaped by ambition, doubt, failure, and the ache for more. Most people only respond to who he is today, but she, the one he couldn't forget, she saw the man beneath the mask, the man not yet born. Not with grand compliments, not with pressure, but with subtle mirrors. You see things others don't. Your thoughts don't belong in this world. They're meant for something more. You don't fit because you're not meant to stay here. Suddenly he wasn't just heard, he was named, and that naming lit something inside him he didn't know was still burning. She didn't invent a fantasy, she confirmed a possibility. And when a man feels that, he doesn't just desire you, he becomes addicted to the version of himself that awakens near you. Because deep down, he isn't chasing love, he's chasing the place where he feels limitless. And maybe that place was never a destination. Maybe it was you. What if the very moment you tried to lift him was the moment he pulled away? There's a hidden law in the male psyche. He doesn't rise because you push him. He rises when you awaken what he forgot he had. Carl Jung called it the inner conflict, and the quiet war between who he is and who he knows he could be. And when he's stuck, angry, aimless, spiraling in silence, most people offer pressure. Fix it. Do something. What's your plan? But pressure triggers shame, shame triggers defense, and defense builds distance. She never told him what to do. She never lectured, corrected, or reminded him who he should be. Instead, she said, "You seem like someone living below his own fire. Like you know there's more, but haven't touched it yet." It didn't accuse, it invited. And in that moment, he didn't feel weak. He felt seen, not for his failures, but for the echo of potential still flickering in him. He didn't have to fight her to protect his ego, because somehow her presence didn't threaten it. It trusted her. And maybe what he needed most wasn't a woman to save him, but a woman who believed there was still something worth saving. The most powerful mirror doesn't reflect who we are. It shows us who we might still become and dares us to step into it. What if the most powerful thing you could ever say was nothing at all? There's a moment in every connection when presence becomes predictable, when your words arrive before he reaches, when your energy answers before he wonders. And in that silence, something inside him sleeps. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of discovering the self through contrast, and contrast requires space. Not punishment, not games, but absence, the kind that echoes. She didn't disappear to be chased. She withdrew with grace, not from resentment, but from self-respect. And for the first time, he sat alone with the echo of her presence. The way she used to say his name, the way her eyes didn't just look, they recognized. The way her silence used to feel full, not empty. And now, in this pause, he doesn't hear rejection, he hears clarity. Because the male ego doesn't attach to what's always there. It attaches to what it fears losing. And when she stepped back, something primal stirred in him. Not desire, but disorientation. Not longing, but void. He didn't miss the comfort, he missed the mirror. The one that reflected his better self. And if he does return, it won't be because she begged. It'll be because something inside him couldn't breathe without that reflection. So the question is, if you vanished tonight, would he feel relief? Or would his ego start looking for itself and find it only in you? What if the reason he pulled away wasn't because you were too much, but because he didn't feel useful to you? In a world where women rise, lead, and carry their own weight, many forget a truth buried in the masculine psyche. A man's ego doesn't just seek admiration, it seeks function. Carl Jung spoke of the hero archetype, not the loud savior, but the quiet force who protects what matters, even if she never asks him to. He doesn't need to save you, but he needs to know there's something in you he can protect, a softness that doesn't make you weak, but allows his strength to have purpose. She never pretended to be helpless, but she let him open the jar anyway. She let him walk her to the door. She asked, "What do you think?" even when she already knew the answer.
Not to shrink herself, but to let his presence matter.
And suddenly his chest relaxed. His breath deepened. He didn't feel like a background character in her life. He felt woven into it. Because when a man feels that his presence brings peace, not pressure, his ego exhales. He bonds not through domination, but through quiet contribution. So maybe it's not about showing him how strong you are. It's about letting him become something steady beside you. Not because you need him, but because you made room for his strength to live. What if the silence he gave you had nothing to do with you at all? What if you were simply the first place his pain felt safe enough to rise?
Most men don't even know what they're carrying. Old wounds, buried shame, the ghost of a father's absence, the pressure to hold it all together, even when something inside is splitting apart.
Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we bury, because we fear they'll make us unlovable. And for men, that shadow often looks like detachment, rage, or the quiet refusal to speak. But then she appeared, not with judgment, not with solutions, but with stillness. She didn't flinch when his voice cracked. She didn't lecture when he went quiet for days. She didn't demand healing. She just remained. And slowly the mask slipped. In the way he exhaled, in the way he didn't have to explain, in the way he looked at her, as if part of him wasn't used to being allowed to exist. He didn't fall in love because she had all the answers. He fell because she didn't run when his questions finally came out.
And maybe he never needed a perfect woman. Maybe he needed a place where his most broken parts didn't feel like a burden.
But now, ask yourself, if someone showed you their shadow, would you hold it? Or would you walk away like the rest? Because love doesn't begin where things are easy. It begins where someone finally says, "You don't have to disappear to be loved." What if he didn't fall in love with you? What if he fell in love with the version of himself he only met when you were there? Not the man he shows the world, but the one hidden under doubt, ambition and fear, the one even he couldn't fully believe in until your gaze made it real. You didn't love him for what he had. You loved him for what he almost was, and that was unbearable. Because when someone sees the part of you you're not ready to become, it's not always a gift. Sometimes it's too much light. So he left, or faded, or stayed, but you felt him disappearing. Not because he didn't care, but because the mirror was too honest. And now you're here, holding pieces of a connection that never had a name, wondering if he's grieving too, or if you were just a doorway he passed through to find himself. But let's stop talking about him.
Let's talk about you.
What happens when you become so good at being the mirror that you forget how to be the one reflected? You keep asking why he pulled away, but maybe the real question is, what part of yourself disappears when no one's watching you with that kind of wonder? Because yes, he'll remember you. Not as the woman who gave him love, but as the place he first met his own soul. And now the mirror is gone, but you are still light.
Still open. Still unfinished. And maybe so is the story. If this stirred something within you, Maybe it wasn't just a coincidence. The journey inward begins in silence. Follow the signs, stay aware, and remember, the self is always watching.